Students have had budgets, families have budgets, small businesses have budgets, towns and cities have budgets, provinces and territories all have budgets, banks have budgets. Pretty sure Brookfield's got a budget. So why doesn't this government have a budget? The last guy thought that budgets balance themselves. Does the new guy think that budgets just draft and table themselves?
We're back to question period today, where the Liberals were grilled on their lack of a budget. Meanwhile, the size of Mark Carney's government explodes as he adds an additional 39 new positions, costing taxpayers over $750,000. Let's take a look.
Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lake.
Tabled a motion in this House that the Liberal government finally put forward a fiscally responsible budget. This Prime Minister says that he wants to be held to account based on what Canadians are paying for their groceries. But instead of putting forward a budget or bringing down grocery prices, he's introduced $500 billion in what we can only assume is more inflationary spending, with Canadians expected to pay an additional $800 in groceries this year over what they paid last year. Our ask is very simple for this Liberal government after 10 years of their inflationary spending.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, there will be a budget in the fall of this year, but you know what's a bit rich for Canadians watching at home is to see these Conservatives who have consistently, at every step of the way, voted against affordability measure. Mr. Speaker, they voted against childcare. They voted against pharmacare. They voted against the dental program we have in Canada. Mr. Speaker, how can you stand up in this House seriously and criticize this government where at every step of the way you fail Canadians to have their back in times of needs?
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Really, Francois Philippe Champagne is talking about standing up in the House and seriously standing up and talking about affordability. Well, yeah, because putting in a dental care program that we can't afford, that's bad for Canadians. Putting in a pharmacare program that hasn't even done anything yet, that we can't afford, is bad for Canadians. And here's something else that's bad for Canadians: not having a budget. And that is really bad because of a couple things. Number one, all the government has done is tabled what they're going to spend. They haven't actually tabled what their revenues are going to be. So although they're planning to spend almost $500 billion, we don't know how much of that is going to be a deficit, because we don't know how much revenue they're planning on actually raising, and we don't know how much they're going to be raising our taxes in what region. That's the problem. Now today, the National Post actually put in an article that Mark Carney is now planning on spending the required 2% of GDP as per the NATO requirement on our national defense. Now, at Northern Perspective, we've been wanting to see our troops supported properly, given the best equipment. That's the least that we can do, because they are voluntarily putting their lives on the line and willing to make the ultimate sacrifice in order to protect our country. The problem is that we've been spending about $41 billion, and 2% of GDP is in the neighborhood of $63 billion. So that's a $22 billion increase over and above what we were going to spend. Fine. But the problem is without a budget, we don't know if that money is going to be just tacked onto the national debt or where it's going to be coming from. This is the problem. So you have Carney just seemingly, the more he is in government, the more he looks at things and saying, wow, this is so much easier than actually running a private sector business, because I actually don't have to worry about where the money's coming from. So for Champagne to stand up there and say, well, Conservatives aren't serious about affordability, they voted against everything. No, they are for responsible spending and not spending what we don't have. This is the issue. And if Mark Carney is planning on cutting a bunch of these programs in order to find that money to spend on national defense, sure, then we can actually find out what he's spending the money on and then have a separate debate on that. But Champagne, you don't even have a leg to stand on.
Conservatives have consistently voted against all of the inflationary spending and their half measures that would see those savings vaporized by their continued inflationary spending. And we'll keep voting against it unless we see a responsible budget from this government for once. Moms and dads, small businesses, single Canadian seniors, they all have to table a budget. They have to live by a budget. So why is it that these Liberals, while food prices are going through the roof and moms are having to water down the milk that they give to their babies, these Liberals won't just table a budget?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that when we have a choice, we will always side with them, Mr. Speaker. We have sided with children in this country to make sure that it would have a national food program. We have sided with our seniors to make sure there would be a dental program in this country. We have sided with young families, Mr. Speaker, to make sure there will be childcare. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we will always side on the side of Canadians, whether they're young, whether they're seniors, whether they're workers. Canadians, we have their back. That's what we said. That's what we'll do, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Canadians want you to table a budget. Canadians, and in some recent polling, have said that they want a fiscally responsible government. And one of the things that you need in order to be fiscally responsible, in order to prove that you're fiscally responsible, is a budget. And that way you can see how much am I earning and how much am I spending, and does that match what my initial budget forecast actually was. And you don't want to answer when you're going to table a budget. You want to table a budget when we're more than halfway through the year. That's ridiculous. We're going to be almost in Q4 of the government spending year, because remember the government spending year ends in March 31st. You want to be almost in Q4 before you actually table a budget. That's ridiculous. It is so dumb that anyone who would try to do that in the private sector, can you imagine? You imagine somebody stands up in front of the board and says, "Okay, here's what we're going to be spending this year, everybody." Okay, well, that's great, Mr. Carney. How much are we actually going to be earning in order to understand how much of a possible debt position we're going to be going into from our spending? Oh, I'm going to give you that in Q4. Excuse me, Mr. Carney? No, you'll be giving it now because we're not going to be approving any of your money until we actually see the revenue. No. We have the backs of our shareholders. That's what we do. We have the backs of our shareholders. So you'll be getting your budget in Q4. Security, please escort Mr. Carney out because he is now no longer working for this organization. That's how that conversation would probably go. So if it doesn't fly there, it shouldn't fly in the House.
The Honourable Member for Barrie South, Innisfil.
Well, food prices up has replaced elbows up at grocery stores lately as food inflation has tripled in the past 2 months. It's so bad now that even sale items are too expensive for Canadian families, and you'll be lucky, Mr. Speaker, if you walk out of a grocery store with 2 bags for less than $80. Inflationary spending must be reversed so Canadians can afford to put food on the table. Will the Liberals present a budget to show that they are at least trying to bring food prices down?
The Honourable Secretary of State for the Canada Revenue Agency and Financial Institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this new government is a government of action, and this is what action looks like. We're rapidly advancing legislation to cut tax for 22 million people, cut the tax on first home purchases, and permanently cut the consumer carbon tax. That's right. I hope, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives will cut the rhetoric and join us in advancing this legislation. Thank you.
So I'm glad Wayne Long brought up, some of this stuff, and the fact that he's a Secretary of State reminded me of something. Ladies and gentlemen, a few days ago, Mark Carney announced that he was appointing 39 parliamentary secretaries. 39. Now, This is in addition to his 39 person cabinet, including himself. And some of these ministers have 2 parliamentary secretaries. So, they're feeling like, big bosses now. And the thing that needs to be considered is each MP that is also a parliamentary secretary carries with that an additional $20,000 a year pay increase. So remember when Mark Carney was trying to tell everybody, well, I'm going to be running a smaller cabinet, smaller expense than Justin Trudeau, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, bull. He's actually running 8 more people total when you combine his parliamentary secretaries plus his secretaries of state, which are the equivalent of Justin Trudeau's junior ministers, and the ministers in cabinet as well as himself. He's running 8 more people than Justin Trudeau did. So this is a massively bloated government. This is what? We're up to 77 people. Over half. Well, almost half. Almost half of the whole Liberal Party that's in government is in government. It's insane. And if you're wondering, the price tag of these parliamentary secretaries is in the neighborhood of around $760,000. $760,000 of taxpayer money for these other 38 parliamentary secretaries. Unreal, folks. But this is the fiscally responsible government that we've all been told. This is going to be the smaller government, yet it's bigger. They're going to be spending less than Justin Trudeau, yet they're spending more. What other contradictions are in store for us?
The honourable member for Ponoka Didsbury.
Mr. Speaker, it's official. This new Liberal Prime Minister refuses to present a spring budget, even though Canadians have been without one for over a year. But in that time, students have had budgets, families have budgets, small businesses have budgets, towns and cities have budgets, provinces and territories all have budgets, banks have budgets. Pretty sure Brookfield's got a budget. So why doesn't this government have a budget? The last guy thought that budgets balance themselves. Does the new guy think that budgets just draft and table themselves?
That was a great bird, Mr. Calkins. Two for one there. Pretty sure Brookfield has a budget as he looks over, and then he just invokes Justin Trudeau, where budgets balance themselves. Say what you want about Justin Trudeau, but at least he had a budget. They were garbage, but at least he had one. Carney doesn't even have one. And that bird there, well, does he think that they, draft and table themselves? So very, very good zinger there.
And Mr. Speaker, he failed to mention one, and Canada will have a budget in the fall, Mr. Speaker, of this year. That's one thing that he forgot to mention to Canadian. But you know what is responsible to do, Mr. Speaker, is the first thing we did when we came to this House was to lower tax for 22 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. That's something that they failed to mention. That's the type of thing that Canadians at home are watching, and they know with our motion and them voting for the bill, Mr. Speaker, by July 1st, their tax will come down. That's what Canadians expect. That's what we deliver.
Yeah, you introduced a bill to lower taxes by about a cup of coffee a week because you split it into 2. This is the thing that they don't want to talk about, the fact that they're saying, well, we're gonna lower taxes for everybody for about $800 per family. So that's around $400 a person. But they even cut that in half, because in the bill they're actually looking at half of that decrease happening this year and half of the decrease happening next year. So they're not even giving you the full tax break. So they're already, not even a month in, they're already breaking their campaign promises. So to people who voted Liberal, this is what you voted for. You voted for campaign promises to be broken and literally half-assed or half-axed, maybe is the way to put it. So, yeah, Champagne, no one's buying what you're selling.
The Liberals are hiding
hiding the state of Canada's finances from Canadians. The so-called brilliant banker who said his strength was planning isn't planning on actually producing a budget for Canadians. Meanwhile, 1 million Ontarians used a food bank last year, a terrible new record, and unemployment in the GTA has now surged to almost 9%. Guess what? No budget. How bad are the state of Canada's finances that the so-called brilliant planner isn't planning to produce a budget for Canadians?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, we increased CCB, we delivered $10 a day daycare, we put in place a national school food program, federal minimum wage was increased, dental care, farmer care. All of these programs have reduced child poverty by 38% since 2015, seniors poverty down by 30% since 2015. All these things the Conservatives have voted against.
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
We voted against all the policies that led to 1 million Ontarians using a food bank. They should all be ashamed of themselves that that's their performance. Meanwhile, TD Bank has now said up to 100,000 Canadians will lose their job this year. And guess what? They refuse to produce a budget. 20% bankruptcies in Canada have surged 20%. Guess what? They're not going to produce a budget. I ask again, what is so terrible about the state of Canada's finances that the so-called brilliant planner is refusing to produce a budget for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Labour.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to talk about this list again because I think it's so important. We increased the CCB, delivered $10 daycare.
Yeah, you're not going to get an opportunity to rhyme off that list. All you've done is made Canadians more dependent on this government. You've put more Canadians into poverty, and this crap that they're trying to use in terms of these stats about, oh, well, we've reduced poverty. Are you kidding me? Seriously. We're still waiting on the numbers for this year, but last year, which would have been the numbers for 2023, they're estimating that 1 in 4 Canadians is in poverty. That's 25%. So what the heck are you talking about? And the Conservatives are right. How can you stand up and not be utterly ashamed of yourselves as to what you've done to this country? How? You have Canadians across the country not able to afford food, that are doubling up in terms of their family residence. You have moms and dads moving in with their kids. That never used to happen. Not for affordability reasons. And here you have the Liberals standing up and crowing about their quote-unquote record. Yeah, the record that had Justin Trudeau forced to resign. The record that caused record low polling numbers until Mark Carney came along with the Liberal government. That's the record you want to talk about.
Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Speaker, forgive me if I'm a bit skeptical of the housing minister who increased the price of housing by 179% in just 8 years in Vancouver. They broke housing. They fueled inflation that drove up rates. They rewarded those who blocked housing construction. They supercharged immigration numbers that outpaced the availability of housing. He says we need affordable housing. Great. But then he turns around and says that home prices shouldn't go down. Both of these things cannot be true, so which one is it?
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm frankly not surprised to hear the confusion on the other side of the House when you put the words affordable and housing together.
That's right.
We're taking action on it, Mr. Speaker, and though the federal government does not control the price of housing, we want to see the overall cost of housing come down. That's why we are investing in local partnerships with cities across Canada to bring the development cost charges down for housing and deliver affordability.
Melissa Lantsman dropping bombs on Mr. Housing Minister. And it amazes me because these guys, these Liberals, are still trying to blame the Harper government for housing being in the state that it is. Well, you know, you guys didn't invest in affordable housing for 10 years. Housing was half as much. Mortgage costs were half as much, in some cases by a factor of 3. You guys have been in government for 10 years. You want to talk about who didn't do anything? Try the people that have actually occupied the seats for the last 10 years. It is completely ridiculous for them to stand up and say, well, you know, it's not our fault, it's the Conservative government's fault. If you guys seriously cannot get a handle on how to actually manage housing and how to bring housing prices down, then stand up, resign your positions, get the hell out of the way, and make way for the Conservatives that actually have some idea of what the heck they're doing.